Ladies and gentlemen, you know who it is. It's the boy, your resident Black Spider-Man, Karabam Zili. Today is a rather special episode, one that I've been super excited to do for a long time. And finally, schedules finally aligned, which I'm so grateful for. I have an amazing guest on. If you listen to the episode that I just put out, that sort of trailer for season six, um, 6 years, which is still unreal to think about. The fact that we've been running the podcast for so long. Um, yeah, just again, thank you to everyone who's been listening all these years, and or even if you're a new listener, thank you so much. But today I have an amazing guest, and to not take too much shine away, or else I'll be introing her for about an hour. I'll let her do the intro. Ma'am, please introduce yourself to the people.
Oh, well, thank you for, as I expected, a very sweet introduction. Um, I'm Hannah Wilson. I live in Cape Town. I think we met through a mutual friend, Amy
Mm.
Stark, our
Ah,
amazing
the
friend.
best. Ah, what a
The
what a
best.
champion.
Amy's
The
just the
best.
best.
Amy Sock, the
um,
very best.
the very best.
Mm.
And yeah, so I work in fashion. Um, yeah, I sort of studied fashion design with the intention to uh, go into costume design and work in the film industry.
Mm.
Um, then I sort of did a bit of a turn and have fortunately still been able to work in fashion,
Nice.
which is a very exciting industry. And yeah, I'm starting a new job on Monday in
Oh,
fashion education,
nice,
um,
nice.
which is also great. And yeah, really excited about the next year and just seeing all the all the growth, all the different changes, and yeah.
So amazing, first of all. Again, thank you for your time. I know we've been wanting to do this for a few months now, and I'm very glad that our timeline. My apologies for delaying us a little bit. I am so sorry. But thank you again for your time. I really do appreciate it. And yeah, I really wanted to have you on because I love, even in like the brief time that we've known each other, like we've had just really cool convos. Um, and we
Mm,
obviously share mutual love for obviously fashion, but also just the creative space. Um, share a similar faith base as well. So we've obviously had a
yeah.
lot of convos that have linked to our beliefs as well, which I think is really really cool.
Mm,
And I thought having you on Anthem and Art Dealers would be cool. And I mentioned to you just because we have a lot of listeners who tend to be either students or young adults who are kind of figuring out their lives a bit. And
yeah.
I've had a lot of really good feedback from people who've listened to previous podcasts where I've had people on, and they're like, "Oh my word, I wanted to get into the same industry as that person." It's so nice to hear their background and kind of what their struggles and even just their creative process. So that's also what I wanted to what I wanted us to talk through today, and also to touch on a topic that we've been chatting about. So yeah, just for people who are listening who are potentially super keen on getting into the similar industry, or even just want to, even just for the sake of like getting to know you better, tell us a bit more about your background, and how did it lead into you getting into studying fashion and where you are at now?
Sure. I think it's such a loaded question, and we
Mm,
all, every single one of us creatives, I think it's always overwhelming when you finish school. You go through the process, where you select your subjects in grade 10 and you think you have an idea of what you're going to be. And, there's so much pressure put on this particular time in your life where, like this is going to be your career, and you,
mm,
you have to sort of start looking at studying options. And I mean, you also mention a lot how you don't like to stick to one discipline within the creative industry. You like to kind of
yeah.
change and move around, and there's such a lot of value in that. But it is a process, and I think when you're creative you're ever changing,
Mm,
and nothing is ever a waste. So if you are you know looking at studying something creative, or I think just start, find something that really excites you,
yeah.
and even if it's just going to First Thursday. We have First
Mm,
Thursday in Cape Town. You guys have a lot of stuff in Joburg for creatives.
yeah.
Go to creative events and just chat to people and see what they're doing. You know, ask people if you can just connect with them, if you can shadow with them. Sometimes you don't even need to study. I mean, I recommend studying for lots of different reasons, but some of us, it's not in our budget.
Yeah.
And if you're creative, you can do a lot. I mean, I taught myself to video edit at school. So yeah, I mean, it's a very personal journey. And if you're naturally talented, you'll figure out what you're good at, and what you're good at usually tends to be what you want to spend the rest of your life doing. But again, it can change.
Absolutely, yeah.
I think, yeah, I think, like you, loved film, and I think from about 16, I just fell in love with film, cinema, and just all the components in that, the costumes, the lighting, cinematography, the acting, just everything, just the drama, the story, everything, music, and just that world like completely grabbed me. I did when I finished
Was there a
school.
specific was there a specific film that like hooked you, like this is it, this is what I love?
Sure.
Or was it like a few
was-
of them?
I mean, I was really big into like period drama, sort of the Jane Austens and the.
Sure.
I think it was probably Pride and Prejudice that got me. I was like, just how organic everything was. Everything was so lived in. It wasn't like theatre where it's kind of very exaggerated and the costumes are extremely bright and bold. And it there's something about like the subtlety of film.
Yeah.
Subtle things in film that's so beautiful. The lighting, the music, it was just so organic and so natural, and so part of that time and that lifestyle. So that's sort of the 2005 Joe Wright film, Pride and Prejudice, absolutely got me. And yeah, so I did a little short course in video production at Media Village when I finished school. And that was a very good introduction, just very practical, hands-on into the industry. And then kind of after that, I was like, I think I need more. I need to be able to use my hands and create things and design. So yeah, I went and enrolled in fashion. I finished my diploma in 2019 with the intention of working in costume. And I think I just decided then, like, I didn't really want to be a part of the film lifestyle, and going on sets and disappearing for months on end and not really having a solid lifestyle of sort of having routines. And so I chose not the lifestyle, but that's not to say that it's something that I'll never do. So yeah, and I've always continued to illustrate or apply for competitions, keep myself busy. I worked for the Fashion Council for just over a year, which was really, really, really educational. Being out of college and really having such I think quite a idealistic view of what the industry was, to really seeing a lot of what goes on behind the scenes, and also where the gaps are and like how we need to improve as a fashion industry, and as also within fashion education, like what the gaps are. So that's been really exciting, and that's kind of how I got to where I am now.
That's interesting that you mentioned that. It's even just from a personally, I'd love to like hear more about that. But before we get into that, I do like to find out a bit of whenever we have people on, kind of the creative process. What's kind of from ideation to execution, like what is your general process when it comes to, like, you're given a task, you're given especially if it's something, if you're illustrating something, or if it's a task from work or whatever the case is, what's like your general kind of creative process? Like, I think for me, I'm quite I get these like random bursts of inspiration, and then I can like, and then I work from, it'll be late, it'll be like 10:30, and all of a sudden I have
that's
this
the best time, prime
time, and then I have this idea, and then I'm just like on my way to go, and then I'll just do a bunch of designs, or like start a timeline for a video that I want to do, or whatever the case may be. I'll be thinking about the idea for like a few days, but then the idea just comes in like super late at night or like really early in the morning, and I just go for it. So my process is a bit like it's a bit random. I won't lie, kind of goes up and down. But for you, is it similar, or do you kind of, or do you have like a task list of things that you need to do? What's your general process?
Sure. Um, I mean, I guess it can always be a bit sporadic
Yeah,
and intuitive. And I think that's kind of like the joy of creativity. Sometimes you're inspired by something. Um, yeah, I think for me, like a huge part of the process is the research process. And that's like, I'm very intricate with the research.
mm,
And it's probably one of my favorite aspects of doing something. So if I get, for example, like a brief, just like dissecting the brief is also like just a fun start.
yeah,
Kind of seeing where your limitations are, and then from there, like doing heavy research. And just I think in terms of like if designing fashion, for me, it's more avant-garde. It's more conceptual. It's more kind of like how can I create a piece that will make people speak and make people think, as opposed to just creating something that's pretty.
yeah,
And I think that's what design should be across disciplines. It should be, you know, I learned in school that art is a message, and
mm,
whichever way you want to tell that message, I think you should create it, create something as a talking point.
mm,
So yeah, I think in terms of the process, there's a lot of research, and then from there, it's how can we execute this. If it's illustration, maybe go on Pinterest and get some ideas of different illustration styles. But then also like just, I think part of the process is just really throwing yourself in the deep end and trying something that you've never done before and seeing how
yeah,
you can do it. And
mm,
often that's when you find that you have these little hidden skills you didn't realize you had.
mm,
And that's really exciting. So the process is just exciting. And I think there's a lot, if you challenge yourself, you can be very surprised at where you end up as opposed to where you started.
mm.
Um, so yeah, I think that's probably like the
Nice.
general idea.
And what inspires you? What inspires that process?
What inspires that process?
Mm,
Sure. Well, recently, I mean, I can't talk about it too much now because it's very much like in the beginning stage. But
mm,
for example, I was just talking to God, and I heard him tell me to illustrate something.
yeah,
And I don't often hear that, but I just specifically told him to do this. He specifically told me to illustrate this. Um, and from there, I've sort of been going through the Bible and kind of like looking at things that I'm going to be illustrating. And I mean, that's a very exciting project
mm,
that I'm doing. Obviously, can't talk too much about it, but yeah, that I think in terms of general inspiration, it can be a picture that I see on Instagram. It could
yeah,
be something that's happening. It's so broad,
mm,
and yeah, I think even just being inspired by other designers. I think we sometimes say, oh, no, we want to be complete enigmas, but we're all inspired by each other as well.
yeah,
And sometimes you can respond to something that someone else has done as well. So
mm.
yeah.
And just to hop on, I just thought of this now, just based on what you were saying. As a fellow believer, we're in an industry which is very much I don't know, very out there in terms of its
Mm,
expression, which is good,
yeah.
which is awesome, and it brings a lot of incredible creators and creative ideas and creative expression. Again, using that word. But what have been your, if any? I mean, if there hasn't been, then that's cool. But what have been your, like, obviously having like a moral like viewpoint and a moral compass, and just we have an example of who to follow, and we're surrounded by like-minded people. But in the industry we find ourselves in, we tend to be surrounded by people who are like very I don't know, just the
I know
expression is
exactly what you're
yeah,
saying.
yeah.
I know
There's
exactly what you're
yeah,
saying.
yeah.
Yeah.
How do you as a believer and as a creative, how do you navigate that, or is it something that's
Hmm.
hasn't really been a struggle, but or is it yeah? What's been your experience with
Sure.
that?
It's a very, very good question, and it's a
Mm,
very relevant question.
mm.
Um, and I honestly think the most important thing to do is to be yourself.
Yeah,
And it
so
sounds
good.
so cliche, but honestly, like I've worked with, we call them secular people, people that are not
Yeah,
tied
yeah,
to any particular religion.
yeah,
And it's a very good dynamic to have, because it also keeps you relevant to what kind of questions people are asking about religion. I mean, I've had discussions with my previous boss about Christianity, and she was, openly atheist, but we
yeah.
had good conversations about it. And just being able to have a conversation with someone, being respectful and respecting the fact that not everyone comes from the same background, they don't have the same set of beliefs, they've come from different families. Um, I think just having that in mind is really helpful, and just also knowing that people are people and they react to situations because of things that they've experienced in their lives. So, sometimes if, people are confrontational with you, or they're just generally very disrespectful towards you, it's a sign that they're probably hurting a little bit on the inside,
Yeah,
and that you
sure.
should just know that, you need to be a little bit kinder with them. Um, but it is a challenge. But I think people, if you stand your ground, people learn to respect you, and they learn to, sometimes they even start asking those questions because
Mm,
they're genuinely curious about, why you are the way that you are, why you believe in what you believe. So, but it's a very good question, and I'm glad
mm.
you asked it.
Yeah, because I think I found it just in my it's been mixed of course. I mean, I've never thankfully like never been uh persecuted, and it's probably a rough word to use for my
Yeah.
faith, and I've been fortunate to work with like incredible people from also believers, but also like from different faiths, atheists as well. But I've just overall just been really dope people. So I've never had a bad experience at all.
Yeah.
Um, have I heard from like other creatives? Like sure, hence why like I was quite curious, and especially like I said, it seems to be very omnipresent in our industry where we were just surrounded by like a mix of people, which in itself is a cool thing because then it offers us the ability to have these conversations like you had with your previous boss. Like we may not be able to have
Absolutely.
the platform, as it were, to um, talk about these things with fellow believers because we're all kind of we're on the same page already. You know,
Yeah.
we're in
Exactly.
different phases in our walk and whatever it is. So, not saying that we can't have these conversations, but it's also nice to have to chat to people who are not necessarily on the same wavelength and have the ability to share the gospel where we can, which is nice. Um, and I guess
Absolutely.
tied to that, um, I guess tied to everything we're speaking to. Do you ever have struggles in your creative expression? Like what when you have a creative block, what's that process like? Like how do you navigate that?
Sure, we love a creative block, don't we?
So much.
Oh, the worst. It is the worst.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Sure. It's very frustrating, but
Mm,
I think it just means you sometimes need to just get out of it.
yeah.
And I think, like, physically, for example, sometimes you are working on one particular project and just nothing's working, and it's just the most frustrating thing. What I would do is I'd literally just say, right, I'm getting up, I'm going out, and then I'll go on Pinterest or something, or
Mm,
somewhere where you can feel re-inspired again. It's almost like you're psyching yourself up again,
yes.
as opposed to saying, oh bloody hell, I've got to work on this thing, like I still need to go back. And
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
so I think, sometimes you just need to give yourself a bit of a break, and
Yeah.
then maybe talk to someone about it. Like, talk to a fellow creative that is, maybe has a bit more insight on something, or even you just need to go back to the drawing board and just research a little further.
Mm,
And then that can spark like more, yeah. But it is very frustrating, but it's very natural. And sometimes out of that block, um, I guess it's an essential part of any process.
Yeah.
And sometimes you produce something that's better or of higher quality just because you've had to kind of do a shift or a 360 or a 180.
100%. Do you find living in Cape Town is that helps a lot? Whenever I go down, I always just love the fact that you can, when you're done like working, for example, you just go to the beach and like take a walk, or you go take a quick hike or whatever the case is. Like Joburg, to do like cool
Yeah,
things like that, or to like wind down, you do have to drive out of town like quite a bit.
I
Um,
know.
or it's quite far out because of how big Joburg is. But I do love, hence why I come to Cape Town like every second chance I get, because I just love the downtime it offers. So do you feel like
Sure.
being from Cape Town, being there, does that
Absolutely.
interesting?
Absolutely. Yeah, no. I mean, I made a comment to you the other day. Every time I post anything related to a beach,
Yeah,
you and Prince
we
on the
always like
post
it.
just like heart the little, and that's exactly what I do.
Yeah,
Like I find the sea just, it sounds so hippie, but I could sit by the ocean
yeah, no,
for
hundred
hours just
percent.
staring at it.
Mm,
It's like there's something spiritual about it, and it's definitely a recharge. I mean, even just getting into one of the tidal pools, I don't know what the temperatures are like, but it's pretty shocking to the system. But it
yeah,
honestly rejuvenates you, and it's something like that. It's just being so close to nature is amazing, and being able to have that outlet is really great for the soul and for the body
yeah.
and for the mind. So yeah, it really is. It's amazing. I'm very lucky to live in Cape Town, and I'm very aware
Mm.
of it.
Yeah, no, Cape Town is a fabulous city. Hopefully I'll be down once again very, very soon. And yeah, I think just one last question on this before we jump on something else quick. What what's keep at the moment, what's keeping you motivated to like keep going? To obviously now you're starting a new job on Monday. Congratulations. That's obviously in
Oh,
itself another
thanks.
motivation to now it's learning a new environment, all that. But yeah, what's keeping you motivated? What's without sounding like a typical Joburg person, but like what's the goal for Hannah in like a few years time, or is it just kind of
Sure.
taking it year by year?
Sure. A lot of goals. Um, I think, sure, I mean, this next chapter is exciting because I think also for anyone listening who wants to get into the creative industry one day or is currently in it, I think I mentioned earlier, but there's literally nothing wrong with having quite a few jobs in your
Mm,
20s, and you can learn so much from those different roles. And I think that's sort of something that I've realized. My jobs have changed quite a lot, and sort of almost every year I've had a new job, which is incredible. And I think just that space to grow has been really exciting. And when you look back at the end of that period, you realize how much you've changed. And I think that's, and how much you've kind of learned throughout the process. So I think at the moment, like this next chapter is, there's going to be a lot of growth, but I think just particularly at this phase in my life, absorbing as much as possible, getting as much experience, um, so that you can. We all need to acquire experience. If you apply for a job, you'll realize that you need at least 5 years experience,
yeah,
for like a mid-level job,
yeah.
so experience is key. I'm very fortunate that I'm able to live at home. I'm able to live in a beautiful city. The goal is obviously to be completely self-sufficient at some stage,
Hmm.
and have a place for my own. Um, and yeah, that will come. But I think what's motivating is, um, yeah, I think just that growth stage, and acquiring experience, acquiring knowledge,
Mm.
connecting with people. Um, yeah, I guess, is it so cliche to say just growing is the
Mm.
motivation?
No, that's so good.
Um, but yeah, also just meeting people and connecting within the industry is always key. So yeah, I think that's probably it.
That's wonderful. That is wonderful. So we've obviously been chatting off air about the series that we've been chatting about on the podcast. Love and Understanding is what I titled it. And I know we've had like some cool convos, but I want also just to pick your brain about the topic, because I think it's quite an interesting one, especially in our generation and in this generation in general. It's quite a unique thing, but I don't even want to just exclusively say that our generation is the only one who's like dealing with this problem. I think it's just it's a general topic as humans, really, and it translates to so many different aspects of life, which is, I think, quite the beauty of the topic. Obviously, when I spoke about love and understanding, I was speaking more in a relational context, but this can be with anything, friendships, or a whole bunch. But yeah, what was your thoughts on the topic? I know we've chatted, but like, what were your takeaways? Yeah, love and understanding. What did you think?
Sure. I remember finishing the first, I think it was your part 1,
and
I just thought, wow, it's something I've never thought about. But it really made me think, and when I finished listening, I texted you and I said, this is so great, there needs to be a part 2 for this. It needs to be something where we talk about it.
Yeah.
And I think, I actually spoke to my mum about it today, and she said to me, I think it's way more important to be understood than to be loved. Way more important to be loved first and then understood. And I thought that was very interesting, because I would say the opposite.
Yeah.
But it's very personal, but also very specific to certain relationships. For example, if you look at like a family dynamic, you would want to be loved first by your parents and then maybe understood. Or you might never really be understood, but you love your parents because they're your parents, and your parents, hopefully love you too. So it is, sure, I think both, we mentioned this as well, like both cannot exist without the other. And sometimes you learn to love through understanding someone, or you love someone and then you learn to understand them in their funny ways. And I guess we're changing all the time, and whether that's a family dynamic or a relationship dynamic, the two need to work hand in hand. They can't be sort of split. So yeah.
It is quite interesting, and something for anyone who didn't catch those episodes, definitely go back. But essentially what I was trying to say, and again, this was all my observation, and again, my opinion. I'm not an expert on this thing at all, but I was essentially saying, and we even chatted just before we recorded my most recent one, where I spoke about how fickle love can be, and I'll touch on that now. But basically, my whole question was, is it better to be loved or understood? And a lot of the way I kind of got a lot of my talking points for the episode was I spoke to people and just asked them like what are their thoughts, and it was so mixed and so broad, or like no one had like there was no consensus answer that I thought it was worth like talking about, because I think it's so interesting. And the where I landed, and similar, it's interesting that you spoke to your mom about it, because I think with family, you're more likely to be loved and like not understood if we're trying to find an either or. Because I think about myself, like I come from a family of predominantly really successful businessmen, lawyers, doctors. I'm one of the few who's like not in that profession, and I don't think they'll ever like get it, because there's probably a generational gap, maybe. But I don't not feel loved by my family. I definitely do, like my parents and my grandparents and uncles and stuff. But I don't think they get, or maybe they get it now. But like maybe in the beginning they were like, "What on earth is, what's graphic design?"
Kid?
Yeah. Why are you painting? Why are you not doing like accounting or something? You know what I mean? But I've never like not felt loved by them, but I most definitely have felt not understood at times. You know what I mean? Whereas with my friends, I've often felt understanding to the height. Like my friends get it. Like my friends are supportive, and they are like they're amazing. But then sometimes we'll go through patches in our friendship, or like we'll no longer be friends, and then I'm just like, okay, well, they understood me as a person, but then they just didn't love me like as a whole.
Sure.
When it comes to relationships, or like building something with a partner, like there, it's always been in my head, it's like they have to sort of be mutually exclusive. Like I don't think you can have one without the other. However, in my experience and in my past, I've definitely felt loved but then not understood. You know what I mean? And I think that's always been and maybe just in my relationships, but even just talking with people who have had similar instances where they're not together with a previous partner, whatever the case may be, it was always like they were loved but they just didn't understand. And maybe that's where communication, it becomes like such a big part, or like a fundamental part of relationships, because I feel like there's a lot about me maybe that I'm still figuring out, especially in like a relationship context, like things that how I express myself. I realize that I'm someone who can be quite emotionally unavailable at times, so I tend to like not express how I'm feeling. Like I'll be down a lot of the time, but I won't say anything. I'll just kind of push through it, and not because I don't want help. It's more just because like I don't like feeling like a burden. So like understanding that aspect of myself, you know what I mean, and trying to I find that difficult, trying to express that. So even I'm trying to find understanding within who I am and all that kind of stuff. And with so yeah, like from your perspective, and maybe from your experience as well, have you found that it's been like an either or thing in different contexts, so like family, friends, or whatever? Or do you find in your life that it's often been the same or like mutually exclusive?
Sure. Well, I mean, I thought about this, and I think I mentioned earlier, for me, my first choice would be to be understood, and then I think love can flow from that, or not. But I would rather, I think, have that understanding, and I think just stemming from that, I think probably why is, for example, in primary school, and throughout school, I didn't really feel understood. I think a lot of us creative people don't really fit into a box, you know. So going through school, I always wanted to be understood, but I just wasn't. And you go through, school's it's a big process for a kid, you know. You don't really know who you are, and kids don't know who they are. So it's a very interesting time in your life, and I think just from that, I think my first and foremost desire is to be understood, because sure, when you meet people that understand you, it's so great. It really is, and you understand each other, and you can kind of bounce ideas off one another. There's so much value in people just getting you, and not having to explain yourself. I mean, if you're having a bad day, sometimes you don't want to explain why you're having a bad day, but if somebody knows kind of how to navigate that because they get you, that's a major thing, and that's an incredible relationship to have, whichever sort of relationship form that is. So yeah, I mean, they definitely can't be separate, but yeah, I think being understood is probably more top priority. I think love comes from that, and yeah.
My like we spoke about it earlier, but I mentioned how, and I probably stand by this, and hence why I said it's on a public platform, but I really do find that love can be quite a fickle thing. And I think as humans, and for people who didn't listen or who didn't catch that, when the reason why I said it, I equated love to football fandom or sports fandom. How in a 90-minute game, I'll use myself as an example. I will be, if we're winning, if Manchester United is winning, I am the biggest fan. I'm happy. I love this team with all my heart. 92 minutes. If it's 2-1, we've lost the game. I'm like, I hate this club. Why on earth
Yeah.
why do I do this
Yeah.
to myself?
Yeah.
But then the next week,
Yeah.
I'm back to loving the team again. And I know love isn't that extreme where it's just like an on and off switch. But and this is so funny because I was watching Love is Blind on Netflix, and I just got to see the end of season 3 at the weddings. Not to spoil anything, but like
Go
even just
ahead.
so some of not all the weddings were successful. Let me say it like that. Some people just said
Yeah.
no, and the one couple, I was so intrigued. So the guy said no, and then she was like because he was like, "Oh, maybe we can still date after this," and she was like, no, I chose you, but you didn't choose me. Why do you think we're done now? So in that sense where it's like it was quite black and white, and I get where she was coming from. um and I was the example that I was making, and it was purely from an experience I had gone through, where, or just experiences where you are so like in love with the person, and it's cool, and then all of a sudden, or just circumstances, and just say you end things with that person, the friendship ends, you're not dating anymore, whatever it is, and now you find someone new, and those feelings that you had for this new person are like, they're valid and they're cool and whatever, but they're the same feelings that you had for this other person. Like the love is still like, and I've always that concept was always like, and I get that's just how life is. Like it's just like, I'm not saying that, and I don't hear what I'm not saying. I never want people to stay in relationships or friendships that are not beneficial to them, or that are not providing value, or you know what I mean. And I understand that it's not as linear for every single thing. That's not what I'm saying. But that concept of just like how I felt about this person, as real as it is, or sorry, how I feel about this person currently, as real as it is the same feeling how I felt about a person 3 or 4 years ago. And that's why I was like, love can be quite fickle, because like, maybe at its core, surely that's not what love is. Like love is like you push through these things, and again, I understand there's a lot of optics to why things end and whatever, so I'm not trying to blanket statement like just love people who are like hurting you and all that kind of stuff. So definitely please don't hear what I'm not saying. But yeah, what's your thoughts on that, on my ramble that I was having?
Sure. It's such an interesting thing I've never thought about, what you just said about loving someone and then loving another person sort of the same way, and sort of, but having love for two different people, or however many people.
Yeah.
And I think there's a big difference between love and infatuation. For example,
Yes.
football
Yes.
team, you're infatuated with them. You don't know
Yes.
any of the players. You don't know them. And this is, I think, also like a big problem with our generation, and like we are so connected to everything, and online social media, like we think we know people, and we think, oh, I love this guy, I love this person, I love this. You don't know them, you've never met them, you've never had a conversation with them. We have such a familiar sort of relationship with people or with things that we actually are completely disconnected to, and we see such a small part of that. And there's this relationship expert, and just hearing, he's very, very interesting. Sometimes I just see his things pop up in my feed. His name is Matthew Hussey. And sometimes his things just pop up, and it always, like, he once said, when you, for example, with a love interest, if you're interested in somebody, you sometimes think, oh, I love this person, whatever, this and this and this. You don't love them, you're infatuated with them. Like there's something about them that is attractive for you, but it's not love. I mean, we know what love is, and love is, it's an emotion, it's not a feeling. And you've said this quite a lot, that love is not a feeling.
Yeah.
It's a lot more unconditional, and I think people sometimes get it mixed up, and I think you have to go through the process of going through all the downs to actually understand what love is. And I think sometimes we don't fully appreciate that until we actually go through it.
Yeah, I think. Do you think it's wrong for me to ask this? But do you think we treat love as well nowadays in this kind of because I always say I feel like and maybe without sounding like a grandpa, but like now I feel like nowadays this like this generation and generation that's the newer one after us, we've I think we treat love because of this very exactly like you're saying, how this very self what's the word, instant gratification era. Like we live in this we like we've social media has become such a big part of our lives now. We post something, we want the likes, to reflect. That's the gauge for like how good the quality is, or like how that's the gauge for how we think how we think it's being represented in the world. Like if it has 100 plus likes, then it's good. That's the only way we get the validation. And I often see it with like, especially people who are younger than me, who like they'll get into a relationship and they just like love bomb each other like publicly, like it's just they'll be like every other day it's like, oh my word, it's the love of my life and blah blah. And cool, like you feel that about the person, and then whatever. I'm not trying to tell you how to post on your social media, but like, do you feel like nowadays love is almost treated, and in all contexts we almost treat love as like we only like really commit to it if we get a lot back from it? So is that wrong for me to say? Like we only really like, I'm only going to commit to being friends with this person or getting into a relationship with this person because I know that they are reciprocating everything, like either to the same degree as me or like tenfold, like I'm getting a lot more, which at its core is not love. Like honestly, like that's not,
It's not.
yeah.
It's
So
not. But I see what you're pointing at, and I think it very easily could be.
Yeah.
And I think we are quite selfish. I mean, our generation is, I think, quite selfish. We don't want to have kids until much later.
Yeah.
We want to travel. We put a lot of things before starting a family, which is also fine. Like we don't have
Yeah.
to.
Yes.
Some people won't even get married. That's absolutely fine, or have kids or whatever. I think we are a generation that puts ourselves in front of a lot. It's a big spiritual battle, I think, just within society. In sort of more, again, sounds cliche, but the secular world, there's such a huge emphasis on like being the best version of yourself. It's I absolutely hate that phrase because I just think like it's so cliche and it's so self-focused. And I was listening to a podcast by John Mark Comer, who's one of my absolute favorites now.
Amazing.
And he was just saying that self-awareness as a Christian is so imperative to your journey, and actually discovering your identity in Christ will enable you to really kind of fulfill what God wants you to in your life, and you develop that confidence through self-awareness, and that knowing that you're able to achieve what God wants you to.
Yeah.
And I think the problem with society is like it's almost like compensating for when you have been put down or neglected, or we kind of say, oh, you've been like working so hard, like I don't know, do some meditation or like whatever, which is good. Like mental health is very important and all that sort of stuff, but there seems to be such an obsession with me, how I'm doing, my emotions, my feelings, and I think we're also so governed by our feelings. I don't feel like doing this today, I don't feel like doing that, or I feel like this. And again, like you said, it's just this whole thing of instant gratification. Like we have so many sort of sensual overloads, whether it's like just even going on social media and seeing food and we're like, oh, I crave food now, like I crave something. You see people making these like croissants in Paris, and you're like, oh man, I could do with something. And it's just, we're so we get like a visual overload of stuff constantly because we're just in this world where everything's so fast.
Yeah.
So yeah, I agree with you. I think that maybe our perspective on love is selfish. Like, what can I get from this? What is this person going to give me, or what is this relationship going to give me? And that's not what love is, because yeah, you'll figure that out, eh?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
And I guess my final question on this for you, and I guess it's pretty broad, but to you personally, what does it mean to feel loved and understood?
Sure.
Like, if you had to say to someone, like, this is how this is what I need to feel loved and understood from you, sir, from you, ma'am. This is it.
Sure. Wow. It's a nice question.
Yeah.
Sure. I think, again, like, I think to be loved for me means feeling understood and being known. I think being really known, respected. I think also just I love the Enneagram. I don't know if you have heard of the Enneagram, or if you follow it, but I think that also just knowing, understanding different people's sort of Enneagrams, and knowing what their strengths and kind of like what their downfalls are, is a really kind of great way of going into any kind of relationship, just understanding a person and understanding how they react to certain things. So I don't know, I guess sure, just really I'm trying to think about this on the spot.
Yeah. So I just threw this on you. This is not a prep question.
You threw this one out there. Sure. I think what is really wonderful is when you meet someone who you don't really have to try with. Like, everything feels natural. You enjoy doing similar things, not exactly the same things. I mean, you're never going to find a perfect person, but I think when everything kind of is organic, and you know, you have shared interests, so sometimes you'll find that you have things in common that you didn't even know you had in common with anyone else. Things like that is obviously, you know, not always expected, but it's, yeah, I think just having that is really great. And I don't even know how else to.
No, that's good. That's very good.
Yeah. You're probably gonna have to cut bits of that, but
no, that's good. I loved it because I think it's such a, for one, because it's a question that I didn't prep you for, but also it's I think it's just one of those things where it's so unique to everyone that there's no like broad, or like there's no like singular answer. So like even I think if I had to answer that for myself, I kind of like, depending on the day, if you like, would I rather be loved or understood? Like, one day I'll say, no, just love me for who I am. Like, you don't need to get it. Like, you don't need to get it. Like, and I'll be like, it's fine. Like, you don't need to understand how I move, the reason, how I express myself and whatever. And then there'll be other days when I'm just like, why don't you get it? Like, why don't you get the way I am? So even like, if I had to answer the question myself, it's like, I guess what it looks like is just understanding that it's very like fluid for me. Like, certain days where certain days I just need that love and support, or whatever that looks like, you know what I mean? And then other days when it's just like, okay, I need you to see the picture I'm painting now. I need you to like get it right now. So I think even for me, I don't really think I have a singular answer. So the answer is great. Like, it really isn't. I think for a lot of people, it's very similar. Like, there's, I think being understood is the gateway to feeling loved, or feeling loved is the gateway to feeling understood. I think they're these two, whatever's your number one. somehow using that as a vehicle to like lead to the other is like super important. And I think just communicating that to people around you is like the main thing. But I guess it's
Yeah.
such a broad topic, and I'm so excited to like chat to more people about it because I think the perspective is so interesting. But yeah, Hannah,
It
thank you so
is.
much. But thank you so
Oh,
much. This is
thank
sensational.
you for having me. Oh, it was such a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was.
And
We miss. Well, there'll be more topics we need to unpack. You know.
lots of topics. All the
Yeah,
topics.
all the topics, all of them. But thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. Thank you for sharing your background, your journey, your process. I think so many people are going to get so much value out of it. Thank you for contributing to the Love and Understanding series. Again, I think there's so much gold here that I think people are going to love. And thank you for your time. I don't take any of this for granted. I know people are busy, and I know you're busy. And thank you so much for making time for this. And really, really means the world
Such a
to me.
pleasure.
And I'll
It's
see you
been
soon.
so
Yeah,
fun.
yeah.
Yes.
Mm,
Thank you so much for having me and also wanting to hear my side. I
mm,
also appreciate that. Um, and yeah, loved it. And
mm,
yeah, I well done for what you actually do
mm,
across all the disciplines. I love the fact that you have created a platform where people can speak and share
mm,
and learn from one another, and it's a very powerful and empowering thing.
mm.
So keep going, and
Thank
yeah,
you.
it's incredible. So thank
Thank
you.
you. Yeah. But yeah, guys, thank you so much for listening. This has been wherever you're watching or listening. If you're on the podcasts, shout out, give it a share, give it a 5-star rating. If you're watching on YouTube, like and subscribe and do all the YouTubey things. And hope you enjoyed this episode. And if you have any, do you want to discuss more, send me a message. I'm happy to forward to Hannah as well to get her answer to a question that you might have. Yeah, I've been funny enough. I get like a ton of people who like will send me like their contribution to the episode, so we'll continue the convo like in private, which has been like the best thing ever. So thank you
Very
to
cool.
the. It's awesome that we've developed like this community of people who want to chat, and I genuinely love it. So honestly, keep it going. And yeah, guys, hope you have an amazing time. Hope you're having a good year so far. I know it's still early, but I hope and pray that this is a really good year for you. And thank you again to Hannah for your time. And yeah, guys, it's your Risen Black Spider Man. It's Karabum. See you guys soon. Peace out.
Cheers.